Here.
Councilor Denning.
Here.
Councilor Edwards.
Here.
Councilor Hall. Mayor Copeland.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Lee. Councilor Mangini.
Here.
Councilor Stokes.
Here.
Councilor Souza.
Here.
We have 7 members present and 4 absent.
Do you have the roll for the board?
Vincent Brady.
Here.
Peter Janitis. Tina LeBlanc. Timothy Neville.
Here.
Raymond Peabody.
Present.
Tom Soroy.
Here.
Stacy Thurston.
Here.
Lori Unwire. Here. David Wallace. We have 6 members present and 3 are absent.
All right, thank you, Suzanne. I am absent the agenda, so I'm assuming that the only item on the agenda is the presentation of the Board of Education budget. So I'm going to go with that. So I'm going to turn it over to Chairman Sirard first.
Thank you, Mayor Copeland. I'd like to start on a good note. We have a really good school system at Enfield. That doesn't get said often enough. I would put that school system up against any school system in the state right now. 6 years ago, we came together as a council and a board with a vision and an idea. We did the heavy lifting, we cut our overhead back as much as we possibly can, and we've actually dealt with some of these mandates in an impressive way. We have a shiny diamond now, and we should be proud of it. We offer really good services, and we don't spend the bank without purpose or need. We're very cost efficient for what we provide. We have a very good superintendent who's not afraid to speak truth to power. He's not afraid to get things done and work well. And although we've spent some money along the way, and I won't deny that, it was money well spent. One of the things I want to focus on and point out is, in spite of the new mandates, those mandates could have cost us a whole lot more money than they did. And the bodies that we hired to make it happen saved us millions of dollars. There are other towns that paid a whole lot more for those very same mandates than we did. And we should be proud of that, too. We have to compete. We have to compete with the Creks of the world. We have to compete with the charter schools of the world. We have to compete, and we can compete. And I'm very proud of that, and we should all be proud of it, because we did it together. And I think that's important. It's important that we continue to work together. To help that out, and to show where we're going, I'm going to have Dr. Schumann explain our portion of the budget to you, and I'll close up with the remarks. I think you're going to be not astounded by our budget, and I hope you're not astounded by our budget, but I think you're going to understand our budget a little bit better. And then we'll answer questions after that. So go ahead, Dr. Schumann.
Thank you, Chairman Sirard. As the Chairman said, we are proud of what we do. We present our logo everywhere we go. We want to pass these out to the counselors in the room. The board has already got them, so I'll pass them this way for the counselors, and Mayor Copeland, if you'd hold the extras, and maybe Mr. Coppa could get them to him. But what you're getting is our pin, our logo that we take everywhere we go. Mr. Dressick and I wear it every day. It's important to us. As Mr. Sirard said, we are promoting the Enfield School District every day in a positive way, and getting people to know that we exist and what we do. One of the important things for us, and attached to that, is the card that helps us understand why we do the work we do. On the card, you'll see our vision, creating a world-class school system, our mission, striving to aspire and develop each individual's gifts and talents, and our spirit, committed to lifelong learning, and the promises we make to our children and our communities and to each other, and the values that we hold dear of excellence, integrity, creativity, resilience, pride, and kindness. This is why we do the work we do. This is why the almost 1,000 employees come to work every day, to work with the nearly 5,000 plus students that we have every day. Now, how we do it is a little different. We took a look at our organization through 4 different lenses: personnel, finances, academics, and students. In addition to those, you'll notice technology cuts right through to the center of who we are. Technology is having an influence on our society right now that is really difficult to control. Not only does the technology change very quickly, before you can even get the newest technology, something else is coming out, but our ability to learn how to use that technology both in a socially acceptable way. When is it proper to use that technology? Who should be using that technology and when? And also our ability to learn how to use that technology to really help enhance student learning. So technology drives a lot of things that we do. It has a lens of its own. But our finances, and that's what we're going to talk about a lot tonight, are divided out in different areas that we look at them. Certainly our payroll, our accounts payable, are two of our biggest expenses and where the majority of our money goes every year. But personnel is huge. As the chairman said, we have evaluation mandates. We have new hiring practices. We have to recruit the best people. And we have to retain those people once we train them and teach them how we want them to work here in the Enfield school system. And academics. We have a lot of academics coming from Washington, D.C. through Hartford, Connecticut, coming right to us. We have a lot of mandates in that area that we're expecting our teachers to be able to get our students up to speed on. And they're going to be taking tests that reflect those mandates that come all the way from Washington. And we're confident that our kids are going to perform well, and that our teachers are going to have them prepared. And most importantly, our students. What are we preparing our students for? What experiences are we giving to them? And how will they grow day to day through a personalized view of instruction that will help them be successful every day and after they leave us as well? Now, how do we do it? We do it with a lot of resources. And those resources come primarily from three major areas. The taxpayers of Enfield fund about half of it. The state of Connecticut funds about 43% of it, and then private and public grants fund another 6% of it. This year we're operating the district at just over $68 million. It's an awful lot of money. We have an awful lot of work to do with it. Each year we begin the budget process by asking our folks to take a reflective look at what we do, how we do it, and what we need to do it better. And this year they came back and they said, well, if we had 40.3 new positions, we could really offer some tremendous things to our students. They wanted kindergarten paras, which is common in a lot of districts. In a lot of districts, every single kindergarten has a para assigned to it. They wanted more high school math teachers, and middle school reading teachers, and computer teachers, primary computer teachers, and counselors at the primary level. And we talked about this last night. And social workers and psychologists to handle some of the mental health issues that our students are struggling with. We want to continue to give them opportunities in the arts, in music, and performing arts, and visual arts. We maybe could use assistant principals now at the lower levels. There's always a need for more special educators to help our students with exceptionalities. And we'd like to have our building staff with our clerical staff another month out of the year instead of having our principals by themselves in our K-8 buildings all summer. And there were some things they asked for as well. They'd love to have more science equipment and other instructional supplies. And they'd love to update a lot of our textbooks. And some of our musical instruments have been around for a long time. And since the kilns were taken out of the schools, we've been struggling to move the student artwork all over town to get it fired, because we only have kilns in a couple places. That's damaging some of the work that the kids are doing. We can always have more athletic supplies. Then we've got some things that we have to do in order to transition to our newly renovated high school. We have a commercial culinary lab which is going to be ready for us to use in September. We also have a band uniform situation. If we combine those bands, we know those bands aren't going to perform as one band until the fall of 16. But it takes over a year to get those uniforms. So if we don't do that next year, in next year's budget, then we'll start as a combined high school with band uniforms from either Enfield High or from Fermi High, or some combinations of the two of them. So those are all the things, transition items and positions that the staff asked for. When we look at how we put the budget together, we're going to do that. Here we go. You can see up in the top yellow, the only transition item we moved forward this year was the staffing to open the commercial culinary lab. It's going to be a beautiful facility. We have an instructor who we were able to hire last year who's teaching at Fermi now. We want to make sure that that lab is used right from the very first instance that it's ready. As we go around the pie chart in red, the fixed cost salaries. Salaries we've negotiated with our bargaining units, causing the budget to increase by $1.3 million. The percentage increase our health insurance carrier is recommending is 15%. Both the town manager and I believe that that number will come down significantly. We have cut it in half. That represents a 7.5% increase in the health insurance premium. We have responsibilities to our pension, disability, and other non-personnel items, $77,000. The workman's comp was originally up very high, but it has now been adjusted back to a number that's only $90,000 over the current year. In special education, we have different responsibilities that are mandated to us, transportation responsibilities, outplacements, etc. Looks like that budget will go up $500,000 to service the needs of our special education students. That's about 13–14% of the total population. We can still continue to struggle with how to budget for magnet schools. Magnet school opportunities are great around the state. CREC is operating 30 brand new shiny buildings that is very attractive. They have a huge budget. They advertise on television, on billboards, and everywhere you go, and they're attracting lots of students. The issue with this is students sign up all the way through the end of September, and we get a bill on October 1st. We have no idea what that bill is going to be. Last year we increased the number, and we were still $250,000 short. We budgeted $1.3 million for magnet schools, and we were $250,000 short. So for this year, we put in the $250 that we're already short, and we've added another $125, and hopefully that will work. We are working very hard with our legislators and the State Department to try to find a different way for us to know that number. We have no problem with children going to magnet schools, but we'd like to know during the budget season what we should budget for. Right now, that's an estimate. It could be higher, it could be lower. If it's lower, that's great. If it's higher, we're going to have to rob from somewhere else in the budget in order to pay for it. And then we have our ITPC, and as you know, the board will, at least in its budget, put in to fully fund its half. However, in the past, the town council has been gracious enough to subsidize the board side of that, but that has not been determined yet. That gets determined somewhere along the line. So for now, we add in the total cost, the board's responsibility, which would increase the board's responsibility about $1.4 million. When it's all added together, it will require that the board's budget increase 6.99%. Again, there's no new spending, there's no new initiatives except for the one transition piece, which is the instructor for the culinary lab at the new high school. Some of the things that we're looking at and are driving us is the opportunities we can provide for children. We're on the right track. The vision that Enfield had to create a STEAM wing is right on. If you look at the highest paying jobs and opportunities, they're in the STEAM fields up at the top of that list. But even more so, at the very bottom of the list is what you can expect if you have a high school diploma. And if you get some college, you go to the blue line. If you go to the purple line, that's an associate's degree. And we're starting programs right now at Stowe, working with very young parents and young children. We're trying to find out ways we can connect with Iznuntuk. Iznuntuk is very interested in helping us help parents get these degrees. And we have an expectation that we're going to be able to send more students from our two high schools to Iznuntuk as part of their program of studies. Right now, Iznuntuk is working as early as 6th grade in our schools. They're coming in, they're teaching technology skills at the 6th grade level over at JFK. We're connecting our students to that. The reason we're doing that, we want them to know that our expectation, very least for every child, is an associate's degree. We want to move them up that ladder. And hopefully we'll instill on them that they will go up to the black line where they'll get some kind of a college, 4-year college degree. We believe they can do it. We know they can do it. We've just got to provide the pathways for them. And if we can do that, we know they'll be more successful. The mission of the school system and the way we do our work has changed. This is what we used to do. We dealt with children with individual differences, multiple intelligences, different cultural diversities, curiosities, passions, and creativity, and we funneled them through our schools with the goal of creating individuals that had employable skills. And that worked for decades in this country. Times have changed. Now schooling must do something different. Schooling must take each individual and find ways to enhance their individual talents. Our students must be able to think creatively, reason systematically, work collaboratively, and engage respectfully. Those are the skills they need, and those are achieved in different ways. So our classrooms will look different, our instruction will look different, and our students will come out with a different set of skills than they had to have in the past. So I'm going to turn it back over to Chairman Sirard, and then both of us and all the board members will be ready for questions.
As I said at the beginning of the presentation, we've done a lot of really, really good things. I mean, Rachel's Challenge, which is a joint program between the schools and the towns, is something that is being looked at nationally. There are other districts in the state of Connecticut looking to see how we implemented some of those changes, some of those mandates, like the Common Core, like the teachers' evaluation system. I mean, they're looking to us because Enfield leads the way in a lot of different areas. And we're focusing on being and earning the title of the center of North Central Connecticut. We are the hub. When the school's done, when the high school's done, we're going to have a really attractive school system. And it will compete with the finest school districts at a lower cost. The problem is we don't get the money. And it's not our fault, it's the state. The board has presented a budget that we say that we need in order to maintain what we have. And unfortunately, for you guys have to determine what it is that we can afford. That way we construe to the law on our side. And we'll adapt. We'll adapt. But we don't, again, we're not adding anything except for one culinary arts position. And everything else is something that we already have. I began this presentation tonight by saying, look how far we've come from 2008. We've come a long way from 2008. We have a good school system. We have a competitive school system. And we're not sitting here telling you this time that our school system will fail if we don't get every penny. Will it be harder to do it? Yeah. But that's not our fault. And it's not your fault. Those people far above us. And they put us in that spot. So, if there's any questions, we want to answer.
All right. Question. First of all, Tom and Dr. Schumann, thank you very much for the presentation. Any questions, comments from the council? Carol.
I apologize for being late, and I might have touched on this before I got here, but can you touch on what changes you implemented this year in the positive side of any programs that were added, any positions that were added, any things you were able to do that you didn't anticipate doing last year? Can you kind of fill me in? I'm asking personally of anything that this time last year when budget was set, things that were on the table that you were hopeful you might be able to implement, but come budget you didn't, or you got there and you could. So.
Well, one of the biggest things that we were facing when the last time we spoke had to do with the implementation of the Common Core and with the implementation of the teacher's evaluation system. We originally proposed to do we needed to hire a bunch of people in order to get that done.
I remember.
Now, Ann McKernan and her staff devised a curriculum that fits the Common Core standard, that actually works towards our goals, that saved us a ton of money when it came to implementing some of the other things. I mean, we have SBAC testing, but it could have cost us a lot more than it did. Now, we've reorganized some of our responsibilities within district, and there's some teachers and some administrators who are doing a whole lot more than they were planning on doing the last time that we were talking. but we got it done. And we will always get it done.
Any programs, Jeff's nodding?
Yeah. Well, as Tom said, we expanded the evaluation system. It now covers all of our teachers, where last year it was only covering our secondary teachers. So we brought on the other half, another 250 teachers are now working with our new evaluation system. And so that's been a major expansion of that. But actually 3 student things. The Nuntuck partnership that I mentioned before, where they're coming into the JFK building. Again, not costing us any money. It's something that we were able to work through a partnership. Another partnership was our partnership with LEGO. They were doing 3 grades last year. We've expanded to grades 1, 3, and 5 this year. So now it's a 6th year, and we just talked to them again yesterday. The folks from Denmark came and visited, and they're very interested in expanding that now to grades 6 through 8, not next year, but the year after. So they're looking at a K-8 program, and I took them over and showed them the Stowe building, and they were so impressed that they're now thinking pre-K-8. So it looks like that's something new. And one of the things we're very much excited on, and it's just getting ready to open, was the grant we received to create the JFK Innovation Lab. And that lab is now up and running, and Mr. Brass is just finishing up the final touches this week on getting the technology synced, and we should have classes and programs going on in there right away. Another thing at the middle school was the CPERS program, the underwater robotics. And I don't know if you were able to see, but the JFK team, the first year they've ever been in competition, swept the state competition. They won all 3 levels, and they will be competing in the Nationals in May at the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth. So those are some of the great things that have happened without a whole lot of funding, that we were just able to take our creative talents from the great people that work for us, and obviously some grant money that we were able to achieve to bring some new stuff to Enfield.
That's fantastic. So, on the other side of that, was there anything that you lost last year that you weren't able to move forward with, that you wish you would have been able to?
There's nothing we had in hand that we had to give up. We didn't lose anything. We had some ideas about, expanding those mental health service positions at the lower levels especially. We weren't able to do that. We still believe that another administrator at the intermediate levels, the 3-5 levels, would be helpful. And the reason for that is our principals are doing a great job managing all the things they need to do, but they're really being stretched to get out into classrooms and be instructional leaders. If we found an assistant to manage some of the issues that aren't necessarily academic related, but things that principals need to be aware of and take care of, then we believe our principals could be academic leaders as opposed to building managers. So those are probably the 2 things that I would say that we weren't able to do in last year's budget that we still asked for this year. Again, we have not moved them forward because of the fixed cost problem.
There's always, and I know this myself, there's always a need for parents. There's always a need for the social workers. There's always a need for the psychologists. There's a need for those people. There's always a need for the clerical. And unfortunately, there are higher priorities over those when money's tight. And we do exactly what we can to make the system work without collapsing on itself and not overextending ourselves or overcommitting ourselves. So we're very much trying to provide the best education the town can afford.
And just a quick follow-up, classroom sizes for the most part have remained stable over the last couple of years. Is that an accurate statement, or?
Outside of removing the 7th grade team over at JFK, they're still not there this cycle. They will have to go back next cycle, but we're pushing it this cycle. I would really like to have added that, but we can't. The budget that we're asking for now at the 6th does not include that, because we balanced it out and said, although this would be a really nice thing to have, and you could argue that we need it, it doesn't fit on the priority list. It's a priority, but it's not as high as some of the other things.
And the other area was, the board made a conscious decision 2 years ago to put in full-day kindergarten, knowing it was going to raise the seat size probably 1 or 2 classes, 1 or 2 students per class. So instead of having 16s and 18s, we have 19s, 20s, 21s, 22s in our elementary level, but we felt that was, the board felt that was a good trade-off to offer the opportunity for full-day kindergarten. And that has remained level since the board did it, but they did get that bump when full-day K went in.
So some classrooms are 18 and some classes for maybe 21. So they're not all
Even
21?
22, some even
Well,
23.
Again, we can't, the way our school districts are set up and the way our schools are set up, we can't help geography. There's more kids living in one part of town. I mean, we work with it,
Right.
and we do, it's a goal, and it's a target. We've been fairly effective at maintaining those class levels. But if there was suddenly a spike in one of our parts of town, I mean, and that's where that's the school that they're assigned, we're going to have to scramble. And we shift bodies around and we try to make it all work.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, that's the only time that you'll see those numbers change.
So going on that premise, does it make sense to add more kindergarten classes or no? You think you're comfortable with the way it is right now?
Here's the thing, you know, when we look at the number of classes in the building, it would be great to add it, but obviously, you know, that's a financial decision that has to be made. But if we added a class, if we had 6 or 3 classrooms at 20, and we put an extra teacher, and then we have 4 at 15, ultimately, that would be great, but to do that around the district, to bring all those kinds of numbers down, I think would be cost prohibitive. I think what we need to do is just make sure that we don't have anything get out of whack. Overall, I think our classes are pretty good. We've got a few on the radar screen that we know are problematic, and we try to get some extra paraprofessional support in those rooms when we need to.
Okay, just an assistance on the ETV side, and I failed to say this earlier, and they were having a hard time picking you up. No, these are portable now.
Okay.
So please, when you're speaking, please pull them close to you, okay? So I have Vinny, because what I'm taking is council members and then letting board members address questions. So Vinny and then Ray, and then we'll go to Gina and Donna, and then Cindy.
Carol, your question was if we missed out on something for the school system. One thing we have missed out last year and even over the years prior to that is the vocational part in our school system. I know Peter has talked about it for years and years about expanding it and maybe, you know, making it large. We find out a lot of kids are not meant to go to college. I mean, some kids are book smart and some kids are handy kids. We would love to expand that program for our schools, but us being budget-wise, we can't, or we haven't put it in our budget in the last few years because we knew we couldn't do it. Is it something that we hope to do maybe in a new high school? We're hoping. But that is one thing that we are definitely missing out on. And we're missing a portion of these kids that are getting kind of lost in the system. And we need something for those kids. Not, like I said, not every kid is meant for college. Some kids are hands-on, electricians, plumbers, even culinary. I'm glad we're expanding to culinary this year, but over the past year, culinary, you had, I think maybe 2 or 3 classes for an entire 4-year span of high schools. It wasn't enough for kids to get ready.
What's the cost to that program? What was the?
Peter had some numbers. I'm not exactly sure offhand, but it's something that, you know, we would like to take a look at.
Ray?
Vinny, thanks for the segue into what I wanted to let the guys know. Last night, Peter had mentioned about early intervention. And one of the investments that was made by the council through the board was on a product called Performance Plus. And what that's done is we enter in the teachers enter in all the grades of the students, and they match them up with where they ought to be. And the principals now, instead of getting all the grade books from the teachers and sitting there putting in manual Excel spreadsheets and stuff, they can now get a report quickly. And what impressed me about it is it shows the students' progress through their history of the school system. And it allows the teachers to jump in quicker and more effectively to intervene and provide intervention for a student. And Tim and I sat in the curriculum meetings and we went through it and we're just blown away by it. It's a data warehouse with very specific screens to go in and can measure that. It saves the teachers, they said they came and presented to the board, I think 4 to 6 days worth of efforts depending on class sizes and stuff like that. So that's an effective use of about $250,000, $250 or $275,000, something like that. And that gives us payback. That's what everybody's been working on the board. So that was a great investment. And you really ought to stop by a curriculum committee meeting, and we'll show it to you, because that's really helping our kids earlier.
All right, thanks. Gina?
Thank you. So I have a budget book dated February 19th. Is that the most recent one? I think that's the one that we've been provided. So I just had a couple of questions. Some I'm going to claim I just don't quite understand, and other ones I just actually have legitimate questions on. So on the Technology Education Department, the budget commentary, 60 out of 86, for those of you who have the booklets. On the bottom of the page, it said the high school equipment increased from 5,000 to 14 to provide for some equipment for the consolidated high school that was not provided through the FF&E. Was that discussed with the high school renovation committee? I'm on the bottom of page 60. I don't, this is what mine looks like. I don't know if that's different than what you're looking at, because that's not my page. That's my page 60. It's
Oh,
the
this is
technology
January 13th
education.
book. So, I'm not,
Okay, so in the one that I'm looking at, which is February 19th, it states that you guys are increasing some high school equipment because some of it was not provided for in the FF&E budget, I'm assuming from the high school building committee, the renovation, that budget. Has that been discussed with them? Because I don't believe, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Donna, we haven't finished the FF&E budget.
where's that here?
Actually, we thought everything would be provided.
Right.
That it would be fully, and maybe Guy might know the answer to that. We're under the impression that the
No.
technology.
When you speak, pull up your phone to you, please, yeah.
Okay. We just went over the technology budget last week, and we were all under the impression that it would be provided.
This is not computer technology. This is the Technology Education Department. So we're looking at things in the metal shop, the auto shop. I think they're looking at trying to put the additional lift in there, but I think there's no funding for one of the lifts. There's no funding for some of the lathes and 3D printers and things that the technology department. I think as you're saying, all the computer technology, I think, is covered in FF&E, but the things for the technology department, for John Daig's department, that's where this equipment is not covered in FF&E.
Okay. And if you actually go down a little more in that same paragraph, $2,400 for off-domain Windows laptops. I thought do you guys use Windows or Apple, or I think I'm confused on what would we be doing with Windows if laptops, if normally I think everything's Apple. No?
Not at the high school.
Not at the high school?
Yeah,
Okay.
just like the real world.
Well, hey, I'm a Windows girl, so I don't know. All right, so then I have questions on the district-wide instruction, which is on my booklet 72, page 72. So if you could just explain a little bit about the increase on for the tuition, the magnet and non-public, and the next, actually, no, you can start with that,
The magnet and non-public schools, that would be.
because it's about
Correct.
500,000,
That's-
right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
We were hit with a $250,000 increase this year that wasn't budgeted last year.
Mm-hmm.
So that sent ripple effects through our entire budget. Usually when it comes to the correct budget, we have to guess. The magnet school budget, we have to guess. We have an educated guess as to where we're going and what we can anticipate. So this year, our educated guess is $375,000 over what we had budgeted originally, at least according to the 6.99% increase. And again, we're usually left in the lurch. Things that we have truly no control over, and they're typically estimates up until the very last minute, are, or even during the school system, are the magnet school stuff, the special education stuff. And some of our overhead costs, like health insurance and workman's comp insurance. I mean, those numbers get discussed through this process. But even like the health insurance costs, we're guessing. It's a solid, educated estimate provided from our information sources. But it's not a solid number yet. We're probably not going to know that until after the budget's passed. And that's, again, that's one of the issues. I mean, one of the things that we face every year when, if there's anything left over at the end of the year, is typically because we froze the budget because we weren't sure where the budget was going. So if we have $137,000 left over at the end of the year, it's $137,000 worth of pencils and papers that didn't get spent. Because we really don't know what's going to happen until the end of the year. I mean, last year when we came in front of you, I said, we're cutting it close. We're cutting it close. We're cutting it real close. We've had some unanticipated expenses, like the special education cost, that, and like the magnet school cost, that we're scrambling. And that means that other areas in the school department had to do without in order to cover those bills. And we have no choice. If someone's got special education needs, the law says we've got to cover it. We can't offer the service in town, we've got to farm them out. The law says we have to do that. If someone wins the lottery and they go to CREC, the law says we have to send it to them. And CREC also can send them back to us after October 1st and keep the money.
Counselor, just, and I apologize for not making this clear in my presentation. The board budgeted $1.284 million, and we're $250,000 short of that number this year. So we added the $250,000.
Added that.
And then I added another $125. So when you add 1,284, you add 375 to it, you get the 1,659.
Okay. Thank you, and I had one more, and I lost my page. Okay, and last one is page 75 out of 86, and this is just, I guess because I don't understand it, this is employee benefits and transportation. The line item for non-public transportation, what is that?
Cheney Tech and agri-science.
It's 394,000, which is, I mean, it's a small increase from last year, but I don't know what that is.
That's not, yeah, parochial school transportation is also required by law. We are required by law to provide parochial schools with nurses, and we're required by law to provide them with buses.
So non-public transportation is the
right.
private school?
Is a private school.
Okay. Thank you, I just didn't know. I think I'm good.
All set?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Donna?
I guess I have two questions. One, I always hear the rumor that the schools don't have enough paper, and I'd like to have you confirm that everybody has enough paper and they have enough hard supplies. And the other thing that, I don't know, it kind of came to light at the building committee is the fact that when we buy textbooks and they have an online component, that those online components have an annual fee that we have to pay to keep that licensure. But that licensure doesn't stay with like textbooks. It goes over to IT. Is that my understanding? Am I understanding that correctly?
It goes over to where?
To the IT budget. So,
It's a software, it's a license, software license.
right, it's a software license, but it's really related to textbooks and what would be hard supplies. And I guess maybe that could help explain to me how the IT side of the budget keeps growing astronomically.
I don't think that's a major driver in that, but I really have to look at it to be
Okay,
able
because
to
I
give
know,
specific
I know
data.
in our
I'll make a note of
business,
that.
these licensures are a major driver. I mean, they're something that we have to buy every year. We know that software is no longer valid without it. The textbooks may not be no longer adequate, and it is something that's demanding of everybody's budget. So that would help me understand IT a little better. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Anyone want to respond to Donna at all?
You know, I have not heard that have a paper shortage. We spend an awful lot of money on paper, but no one has come to me and said we have a paper shortage, nor have I heard that we don't have, pencils and tape and staples and paper clips and things like that. Everybody
Good.
seems to be doing okay,
Great.
as far as I know.
Thank you. I can confidently tell people that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to throw another wrinkle into it.
Uh-oh, Tom doesn't have paper.
We have paper. It may not, again, we have paper. It may not be the exact paper some of our instructors may want, and an exact pencil that some of our instructors may want, but we do provide it.
Can I just respond to
Yeah.
that question? Maybe Guy can help me out with this here. Is that when we typically get these textbooks and we get the digital copies, the rights to the software, we usually go a lot longer with our textbooks than our licenses allow us to do. We'll oftentimes get 10, sometimes 15 years, which is way too long, but we get that out of textbook. What's the license, like 5 years, 6 years, something like that?
They've dropped it even down to as low as 3 years, and a lot of our subscription services now are on an annual basis. But what we try to do is negotiate lower prices by agreeing to purchase 2 or 3 years in advance when we have the opportunity and have the resources to be able to do it.
But the textbooks companies have not missed a beat on making money on textbooks.
Okay, Cindy.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. One, the budget book that we have dated February 19th, 2015, is that the most recent with all your changes and corrections and amendments, et cetera? So that is the most current
That's
book?
correct.
Okay. And then the other question I have, with regards, Dr. Schumann, you mentioned the workers' comp, $90,000 increase over the current year?
Correct.
Okay. Over what you have in the book, or what's in the book is?
Well, in the book, you'll see the 2015 appropriated, the 2016 BOE is $90,000 up from the 2015 appropriated.
Is there a reason why there's such an increase?
Yes, the cost of premiums going up, and as you know, as everyone's well aware, we're in a kind of an interesting phase of moving from a fully insured to a self-insured program, and so there are some wrinkles that are causing that number to fluctuate until we become fully self-insured.
Okay. And then the other last question I have, you mentioned 1.4 million is included in the ITPC.
Correct.
Should the town side decide to cover that, you would back that out?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I'm just throwing it out.
I tell you, we can get a lot of paper with that.
I want on the table.
Now, so we're clear, the reason that it looks like a big portion of the 6.99% of our budget and is we did back it out the last time. So it doesn't show up on last year's budget. So we back it out. And we back it out every time that you guys do that. The problem is every time we come back to you, it catches up to us. And we say, this is what the full amount is.
I got it. Thank you.
Anyone else to respond to Cindy? Okay, Ed?
Well, I have some questions. I'd like to know how many students currently in the CREC right now. I don't have that number. Does anybody?
I don't have the actual number. We have I will get it, but my ballpark is a little over 400 students attend magnet schools.
$1.8 million worth that.
I didn't ask you how much. I want to know. I can do the math.
It fluctuates, but I
Students, I like to get a list of students by school, each individual school. How many is it? How many students are in Fermi High School? How many are in?
We publish each month. We ask our principals to submit to us their enrollment.
Okay.
So we publish that monthly. It's probably up on our website, but I will get it to the
Well, I can
manager.
get it on the web, if it's
I
on
think
the
it's up
web.
on the website, yes. Mr. Ross is really
Um,
yes.
All these evaluations that we're doing with teachers, who's actually doing that? Are there people assigned specifically to do that, or are the principals doing those evaluations?
Well, all the members of the ADCO bargaining unit, which are our administrators who hold a 092 certificate from the state, are doing it, along with central office staff who are administrators.
I had a question about, that's not the community college manufacturing program, but I found that we are participating in that now.
Yes, we are.
Because that's a great program. I think the other thing I have is I got a question about saving dollars. The town of Enfield and all administrators and so forth are on HSA. The teachers are on HSA, but I want to know why non-union administrators in the school department and people that you're negotiating with other unions, is that your plan to go with HSA, or is it not?
Actually, several of the other bargaining units, at some point during their contracts, will come on to HSAs, and the goal is to move the entire system to an HSA.
The whole entire system, you're talking about everyone?
At some point, yes.
I guess that's, oh, and there was I always have a bugaboo about substitute teacher salaries, and I noticed that, dollars, and I noticed that from last year, about 750,000 were up to 831. Is there a reason? Is Kelly Services charging us more money to run that program, or?
Yes, Kelly Services adds, obviously, their cost of running business and their profit into our daily sub rate. We've calculated that to be less than the cost of having to provide health insurance for those individuals, because they will exceed the minimum number of hours, and therefore we would have a whole lot of people eligible for health insurance on our plan. So we're watching that day to day, and we're still trying to evaluate what's the best way to go, and we're also watching the federal government to see if we're going to get any relief from the law. But right now, it appears that the best way to safeguard our assets is to pay the premium to Kelly and not be on the hook for the health insurance.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's it.
Thanks, Ed. Anyone else? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I had one other. Now, you indicated in your presentation that you weren't adding any staff or positions besides one culinary. There's no hope to get any guidance counselors or school counselors in K-5 schools?
Not at the budget request.
Sure, go ahead.
I think the questions, sorry. I think the questions are
Didn't do that either.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I wanted to know about guidance counselors in the K-5 schools.
You're looking for ads, okay, which,
Well-
I would certainly go along with that, and I think the discussion we had last night about some of the mental health issues that we want to deal with, I guess, as a group, it all comes down to dollars. And I think one of the things we're concerned about is, that 699 is pretty high,
It is.
okay, but I think we've cut it down to the point, until we get more information, that's where we are. If we go lower than that, there'll be cuts.
Right.
Okay, and I think that's we're talking about the impact of what people have done. I think people have done a great job with less, okay? We were very, very worried last year, and I think they stepped up as they have just about every time we've asked them to. But I think this is a significant amount of money, and we've done all the things. I think I could say we've asked you to cut all the things that we can cut. We're into, the bone and marrow here. We're talking about staff. The only real place you can get money is to cut staff and program. There's no other place to go. And I think that's the reality of this. I think, Tom did a good job of getting it out there of what we've tried to do in terms of being more efficient. But I think, and it's not, we are intentionally not sitting here and trying to get people excited about the cuts, but I think we have an obligation to be transparent that if we do cut, there have to be cuts, and they're people cuts and program cuts.
And I get that, and I
know.
appreciate that, and I guess, not that I want to get into your negotiations amongst the board themselves, but was that a discussion point? Did you talk about,
Yes.
school counselors, guidance counselors?
This
Is there
is absolutely-
even a
this
possibility
budget-
that may happen, perhaps if sped costs and magnet school costs are lower next year for some odd
Well,
reason, and you have money there? I don't know.
I can speak to the board that sits here. This is a consensus budget.
Mhm.
Everybody gave something, everybody got a little piece of what they think was really, really important is what their top priorities. So this is truly a consensus budget across the board. Everybody got something in there and everybody lost something. And we all believe, I think, at the end of the day, that this still keeps Enfield competitive. This still makes Enfield a good school system. And I think that's important to remember. Most of the cost increases you see are just operational costs.
Mhm.
And that's all it is. And unfortunately, it does, and I say it all the time, we're being flat funded probably less, you're getting less funded now, according to the last rumor that I heard, from the state. And that hurts us directly. And it hurts our budget directly. And it hurts the town directly. And that it's time to acknowledge that yes, that's the cost, that's the problem. You can say that the town is flat funded, the state's been flat funding us for forever. And that's a big problem, and the problem.
You were talking about class sizes before. if we're not kind of close to what we presented tonight or submitted tonight, we're looking at class sizes going up. We're looking at the requirements for graduation credits going up, I believe, next year, Dr. Schuman? Or they
Well, it's been
gave us another
postponed
year?
again. We have a
Okay.
couple more years. for
But
that.
within the next 2 years, they're going to require more credits, meaning that we need to have the classes for these guys to get their credits due. If we don't have the budget to do these classes, we run into a world of hurt. We really do. I mean, how do we provide these kids to get the needed credits that they need to graduate? Like Tom said, we're kind of like bare bones now. We've done what we have over the last few years, and we're kind of at a loss now what we would do. And we asked Dr. Schuman, what's the impact of this, and this? And there's some significant cuts in class sizes, increases, and I don't think anybody, I think we're a board of 9 that really believe that this town can afford to do that. So I believe the budget that we presented tonight is a fair budget, not just for the kids, but I think for the taxpayers of this town.
All set?
I'm good, thank you.
So just, since Tom brought it up, but I was going to say it anyways, and I don't want to put, it's not meant to be a scare tactic message to everyone, but it's not, the greatest news. So we're on regional bodies and had a CROG Executive Committee meeting Wednesday down in Hartford. And these are quarterly meetings, and we have the lobbyist that represents CROG at the Capitol. And comes in and talks about legislation that's moving through the process. And so without putting words in his mouth, so I paraphrase, his impression at the Capitol is he has never seen it the way it is now. A lot of worry, a lot of concern. The state's deficits are massive. And so the governor's budget held municipalities harmless, and I said it, and other people said it when the newspapers asked, if we're being flat funded from a state perspective, we're basically being held harmless. But what the grumblings are is that the folks that have been hit the hardest in the budget reductions have been higher education and the social services. And higher education and social services have constituencies that can very easily be called out to testify in front of the legislature. Municipalities and boards of education, we don't. I mean, we can't call on an army of 100 people to go say, go down to Hartford and say, don't cut municipal aid. We have, but no one's going to come out. So we have CROG, we have CCM, we have CABE, we have our groups, but we're all elected officials and appointed officials. And we're looked upon differently than the folks that receive the social services and the students that are at UConn and throughout the state. So the concern is that at some point, a legislator, and I wouldn't want to be in a legislator's shoes this year, is going to have to make some really tough choices. And the pressure is going to be coming from these groups that historically have the large lobbying groups and have been cut tremendously in the budgets. So his message to us was, yes, the budget is hold harmless, but don't bet on that. And don't bet on resolution prior to your budget setting times. Now, some communities are already, deep in the weeds and start approving their budgets in some are already done, February, March, April, we're one of the later ones. So, and really the only other place, if they have a stomach for raising taxes, that's one thing. But the group that has been held harmless for years have been municipalities. So it's kind of the message, it's the same message we've heard year after year, but we haven't been hit. But now when the hits are happening on places with large constituencies that come out and lobby, that the pressure might be that they've got to look for relief, and really the area to go is a tax increase, or you're going after municipal aid, or a combination of them both. So that was just a message that came out. Of course, it, put a whole damper on the whole meeting. But it's, and I don't think that's anything new that none of you haven't heard already, but, no, we don't have, but, and we're meeting with them, and so, well, my question to you folks is, and I know you've all been working very hard with our legislators, over the course of the year. It doesn't start when you start your budget and doesn't end when it's done. Any headway that you feel is being made on, on special education, on MBR, on these, do you think, on the correct schools? We had a meeting with Senator Kissel, the mayors and first selectmen in the 7th senatorial district last week, and unanimous on issues with the magnet schools drawing people away, and then the funding not coming back, and the cost of special ed. But I mean, in your crystal ball, any possibilities, or do we think it's not going to happen?
If I may, we've talked to them several times, and I think they're enthusiastic to go after it. It's not the issue of magnet schools. I'm not looking to deny anybody anything. I'm just saying play fair.
Right.
Okay? We just get a bill, and the kid drops out, they get to keep the money. We don't get any notice of what that bill's going to be until after our budget's set. Okay? No business could run that way. Okay? And you get a $250,000 surprise. That's some program, somebody's getting cut out of that. Some service is getting cut, and there's some impact on some kid somewhere in Enfield, or a group of kids. So I think the feeling I got, Tom, you correct me if I'm wrong, is that they think this will take several years to get through, okay? Eventually, it will get through in their minds. We were supposed to have them here last Tuesday, and they get called to the legislature. So, and we're not going to be able to meet with them until after the budget's set. And so, which I think shoots this year, full of holes. But I think, I don't have lots of hope for it. I wish the public would understand just how unfair it is to the towns and the school districts who are trying to provide the services, but they're just not being treated fairly. And I don't think that it takes a lot to plan it so you have your numbers by May and get it to us instead of October 1.
My conversations with our legislative team, there's not the political will in the state capitol to give us mandate relief, because everything looks bad politically. If you get relief from the special education costs, you have a special group of people that are going to take offense to it, and are going to take a hit in the pocketbook. If you amend the magnet schools, now you're going after a court settlement that they have established with the Supreme Court of the state of Connecticut. These are all people's pet projects that there's not the political will. I mean, we may have 3 guys up there swinging and going for the fences, but the rest of that team that's up there is not interested. And that's why it's taking so long, is because they're not interested. For 40 years, they flat funded us, and they got away with it. That's how it works, and they don't care.
Right.
When I went down last March to testify on Common Core, there was a lot of talks about other people who were there from other boards of ed. And some of the challenges Tom alluded to is even in our lobbying body called CAVE, they have correct people on their board, so we can't even get heard on our own lobbying body. It's a challenge. But when I talked to John Alexander, he was really reluctant last year to sponsor a bill, and because it would never get out of committee. Well, after further conversations with John and Dave Kiner and Senator Kissel put legislation forward this year to move the cost of CREC from the cities and towns to the state. And that would meet one of the Chef O'Neill criteria, is not using property taxes to fund education. So that kind of would help with what Tom was saying about lawsuits and things like that. But the appetite's not there in the legislative body yet. It's going to take the boards of eds to come together, and that conversation has been happening offline. Conversation with Windsor, conversation with people down the southern end of the state, when I was there. They want to do this, but we got to get it out there. And we're going to need your help, but we're also going to need patience while this takes half, because it could take a number of years. But I guarantee you one thing, I feel very strongly about the legislature, legislator that gets that approved will be very highly regarded throughout the state.
By some people.
By some people. I just want to throw it out there, Scott.
All right, does anyone have, thank you very much. Does anyone have any further questions or comments? All right, so we'll stay close as things transpire. What you hear, please bring back to us. What we hear, we'll do the same. And thank you.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Cindy, seconded by Donna. All those in favor? Those opposed? We are adjourned.